Welcome to the Sportsman's Voice podcast, your inside connection to outdoor legislation. From the Beltway to policy happening your way, we're covering it all. I'm your host, Fred Bird. Join us as we explore public land access, wildlife and fisheries management, Second Amendment rights, the triumphs that shape our nation, the sports we all love, and the stories that fuel our passion for the great outdoors. This is the Sportsman's Voice podcast. Welcome in, everybody, to another edition of the Sportsman's Voice podcast, the official podcast of the Congressional Sportsmen's Foundation. This week, we welcome in Jana of Skullbound Chronicles, Julie McQueen of Carbon TV. We're hitting on some heavy topics this week, kind of touching it all. It's one you're going to want to share with your friends, the ladies in your life, especially those that are interested in getting into the outdoor community, the shooting sports, how we represent ourselves in the public eye, and how to better tell our story. We're touching on all of that and so much more in this episode. Stand by. We're catching up with Jana and Jules. Let's go. Jules, how are you? It's been a number of years.
I know. I haven't talked to you in a long time. Everything's good.
Last time I saw you was at a NWTF convention.
Yeah, it was like six years ago or something.
Talking about this podcast thing.
It's always a work in progress for all of us.
Everything's evolutionary, you just evolve.
I think that first time I ran through that floor with my first setup, I thought I had a whole bunch of sound recorded and I didn't hit the button right. I had like all this stuff go away. Like it never recorded. I had some really cool conversations that I have up here, and I got home and the SD card's almost like completely blank.
I remember that. Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
That sounds like
something I would do.
I have a picture of us from when we recorded that day, and we were like little kids. That was so long ago.
Yeah. This fad.
We're like children.
It's crazy how quick it goes.
It is crazy.
Well, in the interest of your time, I want to respect that I've been recording, so I'll just talk you guys in and make the introduction for this episode of the Sportsman's Voice podcast. Welcoming in Jana Waller, Jules McQueen, Jana of Skullbound, Jules of Carbon Media, or is it Carbon TV? I want to get it right. I feel like
it's Carbon TV.
Okay.
Yeah.
I want to get it right. Thank you both for joining. It's good to see you both again.
It's so good to see you. It's been, I think the last time we saw each other, Fred, was at Turkey Camp a couple of years ago.
Super secret turkey camp of Montana.
Yes. Hush, hush.
All right, I got my...
We can talk about it in front of Julie, though, because she's been there a bunch of times.
I have. Yeah, I got the invite.
No coordinate.
Pretty proud of that.
Is he doing it again this year?
I don't know. He is. I don't know when. Unfortunately, my spring is not, and I'll be in Montana for a week or two, but hunting bears. So I don't think I can make a Camp B-roll this year, but it sure is a good time, and I miss it.
Yeah.
I miss it big time.
Where are you, Jules? You're in Michigan, right?
So I relocated to Arizona.
Oh, no way. So you guys are all over there again.
Oh, yeah, I had to get closer to Jana. Yeah. That's the ultimate goal, is just to stay close. Wherever Jana goes, I just have to follow along.
How's Arizona?
I'm closer now. It's amazing. I love it so much.
Yeah.
It's so nice. Yeah, it's really nice. I was in Michigan. Our Carbon headquarters are in Michigan. So I was there for a number of years. And it's awesome. It's such a good state. But, my heart's out west. And I love it out here so much.
What are you getting into out there in the spring? Do you want some turkey hunting? Anything cool?
I mean, I don't have as many turkey hunts planned as I normally would because I have to work a lot.
Hard work.
I know, it gets in the way of everything. But I do have quite a few invites right now to go to some turkey camps. So I'll probably pick and choose a few of them and just bail out for long weekends. Not a big spring planned out here though.
Yeah.
There's always that adjustment time too. You just moved out there. So
I just moved. Yeah, I'm still getting settled in. Yeah.
It's an arduous task, especially just turkeys. Never mind all the cool stuff you guys chase out there in the West, but just turkeys itself, trying to figure out who's going to draw as a non-resident coming into these states, where you can hunt, where you can. It's man, that's a full-time job in itself.
Yeah, it is. It helps to know a lot of people. Yeah. That's really that's the ticket. If you know a ton of people and you have a lot of friends, there's always, somebody in every state
that for sure
can fill you in on all the details.
Are you still considered a non-resident at this point since you're so fresh? Like, do you have to establish residency for like 6 months before you get in-state tag?
Yeah. So I'm still technically, I don't even know where I'm a resident of at this point. I mean,
Jana.
I think
neither one of us.
I shouldn't even say this. This is like something I should just keep my mouth shut. I think I still have my Montana driver's license. Actually, I'm sure I do. So I don't know. I mean, but I haven't been hunting much anyways. So, I just, I need to get an Arizona driver's license, I think is what I'm trying to say.
Yeah.
I need to do the responsible adult stuff.
You're just a world traveler. It's hard to keep track,
It's hard to stay in one place. But I think we got it figured out now. We're growing up.
What's Utah like for resident turkey?
I'm sorry, what'd you say?
What's Utah like for resident turkey?
I honestly don't even know. I asked John the other day about it because we were talking about it, and not that I have any time, but because we were hiking last year or the year before, and we came across some turkeys. I think he said there's areas. It starts out with a youth hunt, and then there's areas that you can put in for, and there's special tag units. In fact, a lot of the Sportsmen's for Fish and Wildlife banquets that we've been going to are auctioning off turkey tags, but those are special units. But there are other units that I think are over the counter. I just don't have time. Every single weekend we're doing that, I married an auctioneer. So every single weekend we have usually auctions, sometimes Wednesday or Thursday night, and almost every Friday, Saturday night. This Friday we're down in Bryce Canyon, Utah. Then we're Saturday back up to Salt Lake for Pope and Young. So we're like literally running all over doing auctions.
Man.
And I have 4 bear hunts this spring.
Nice.
So unfortunately, turkey's on the back burner for me this year. But some years are just bear heavy.
So when you're bear hunting, Jana, do you just get like a turkey tag available in that state and keep it in your pocket, or is that not a thing?
Montana, you can do that. Yeah, which is a great state for that. There's certain areas of Montana, you can just get a turkey tag over the counter. And then depending on where you go, when you head east, you could get another turkey tag over there over the counter, which is awesome. But yeah, we would often do that. And I don't think I've never killed a turkey while bear hunting, but we've definitely seen them. And remember, you and I went out that one time. And
I remember.
I think we saw more bears than we did turkeys, but we didn't get either one.
Yeah, it was still fun. We didn't accomplish a whole lot, but we had a good time.
Well, what is fun about certain states like Montana is that you can literally have a bear, a turkey tag, and then depending on the fall, you can have a mountain lion tag in your pocket, a deer tag, elk tag, sometimes antelope tag. Like you can have so many species of tags in your pocket, which makes it so much fun.
Be a hell of a packo.
Yeah,
right.
With the turkey and the spring
you play
bear.
The game like guess what's in my pack.
Yeah.
Exactly right. Jana, I almost nerded out. Because I tend to, when I kill my bears, I just do I do the K-skin or whatever, just to hang them on the wall. I don't have the room nor the room in my wallet to get life-size mounts everywhere. But anyway, all that said, I was gonna wear my black bear, one of my black bears, and do my best impression of being a crow on the wall. In honor of our recent back and forth and nerding out of Game of Thrones. So I wanted to get that all out there, check in on the King of the North, see how he's doing. You just said he's very briefy.
Isn't that so funny? Yeah, we've done so. The other, I don't know, a month or two ago, I did a post about John walking around. I don't know if he had. Yeah, I think he had one of my bears on him, and he picked up our fireplace. We have a brander, so he picked up the brander and acting like King of the North. And then 2 weekends ago, we were at a Wild Sheep Foundation banquet, and there was a beautiful wolf hide. And I was emceeing. And in my mind, I'm like, should I even bring up Game of Thrones or not in this crowd? It's one of those series where you're like, not sure you should admit you watch it, but it's so good. And so I started joking with the crowd about, people, this is like, for all of you Game of Throners, you need to bid on this wolf hide. Can make all your dreams come true, walk around the house like King of the North. And the funniest part is Kip, our buddy Kip, ended up buying the wolf hide, and after the auction gave it to John. So he was walking around the auction afterwards with it on. And yeah, it was super fun to have that reference. And your comment won definitely comment of the year, which was the North remembers.
Yeah. Jana, I'm kind of shocked that we got all the way through April Fool's and you didn't put out like a press release that John is in the next season of Game of Thrones or something. Like, how did you not do that?
Right? Darn it. That would have been so. I need you to help me with ideas like that, Jules.
I'm all over it. Yeah. Well, I'll start planning for you for next year.
Would he be best suited for the new Snow production coming out next year in 25 or the next season of House of the Dragon?
Oh, is there really? I did not know there was a new Snow
rumor on the street is there's a Jon Snow specific spinoff coming in 2025 . So
I did not know that. Well, that's so exciting.
We get to pick it up and see where he went.
I definitely think he's more, King of the North, Jon Snow. That seems to fit his aura, his personality a little bit better. I did watch House of the Dragons. Is it House of the Dragons? Yeah.
Yeah.
I didn't like that as much as for a series. It was still good, but it's so funny. Game of Thrones ends, and you're like, it's so. Now what? Now what do we watch? And that's a good second place, I think. But yeah, so we just watched it for the third time. Got through all 8 seasons in probably a month and a half, which is really scary because we binged. But when you're in Utah and dealing with blizzards, there's not a whole lot you can do. So yeah, I love that series, and with the wolf hide in the house, which is actually right behind me on the couch.
See it.
We can have a lot of fun with that.
Well, when you posted that, I had just wrapped my binge for the 6th time.
Well, what? I am so far behind. I think I've watched like 10 minutes of the whole series. I got to catch up on. Okay, I'm in. If I check out of work for 2 months, you know what's up. Like, I'm just not going to do anything but binge watch.
Yeah.
Well, there is something about, and now mind you, for all those listening, don't watch Game of Thrones with your kids.
No.
There's no. But
depending on their age, I think when you get to season 7, you can probably watch
it. Maybe. But there's it is quite graphic at times. There's, some things you don't want your kids to see. But the characters, there has never been I can't believe we're going on and on about Game of Thrones. Sorry, everybody. But the character development in that series and the casting of who they cast for what is perfection. It's just perfection. It's so good. And so don't send me messages, people, about, I can't believe you watch. But I dare you to start watching it and stop. You won't be able to.
I celebrate it.
You're just too busy. Jules is too busy. She is the president of Carbon TV and in charge of so much. She hardly ever watches TV. So that's the problem, Jules. You need to I'll just kidnap you for a couple months and make sure you watch all 8 seasons and get you.
I only watch Carbon TV ever.
Well, plug.
So there.
Well,
it's true.
It's true.
Now that our nerding out has gotten a good 15 minutes into I listen. One more note on Game of Thrones, and then I really will move on. Having watched it 6 times through, the first time through, I hated the ending. No spoiler alert here, but those, if you know, you know, I hated it. 6th time through, I started looking at it and said, I actually really like the way this ended up. Like, who did what, how it all ended, some of the biggest gripes fans had with it, and I actually appreciated it more. So, good luck through 1 season, never mind 6. So that shows you what a lot I've got.
It is so true. I feel the same way about it. It's one of those where you're number one, you're mad it's over.
Yeah.
But no spoiler alert here. But I have to say, after watching it for the 3rd time, I grasped it a little better, and I agree with you that it wasn't as frustrating as the first time. But then we'll get off this, I promise. But when a series leaves you emotional, it was really funny, mad or excited, that's a good series. And there's times in there where you hate certain people.
Yeah.
You just hate them so much because they're pure evil. And it's funny because if I ever say something semi-snotty to John, he calls me Cersei.
Oh.
For anyone who knows watch Game of Thrones, that is not.
He better watch out. I'm giving you that.
Anyway, okay, move on. I'm sorry, I keep going.
So the business at hand. So I wanted to bring you guys on, both of you, very successful in our space and beyond, obviously, and touch on women in the outdoors. All 3 of us have talked about this in the past, and Obviously, two very well known ambassadors in our space. But I kind of wanted to not do the typical, and I don't want to say this sounding insulting, but I feel like it's been overdone, like, women empowerment, all this. There's recently another level I want to address, and especially coming from the policy side of things. Most recently there was a dust up socially with an outdoor personality with a heck of a following, and the criticism came from another female. So I wanted to start off. So often what we've seen in social media and outdoor television is the criticism put on the ladies coming from seemingly jealous guys who have, been thinking they're the cat's meow, and some, Insta model with the term them. And there was just a lot of jealousy there. So they take a lot of heat from the guys in the space. Not so much the ladies, or at least I never really saw a lot of it. You guys can speak to that. But this recent dust up came from someone more mainstream attacking a female for doing what she does, and then just really the viciousness of it. And anyway, it was a different dynamic to that. Can you guys speak to that? And if I'm off base on what I said earlier about females attacking females in this space, let me know. But one,
I don't think you're off base.
Well, I do though. I think that at this point in my career, I don't get attacked much anymore because I don't put myself out there as much as I used to. But when I did go through that, the majority of it was females because it was, just kind of, I just noticed it was more women than men. But if you recall, this was quite a few years ago when that was the thing. That was a thing to do. Everybody was getting attacked. Everybody was getting, slammed for things. And I was actually keeping a list on my laptop of, if anything happens to me, look at these people. It was like, these are really vicious women and they're coming after me. And I started doing research and finding out who they were behind their fake pages and where they work. And I was like, defending myself. So I don't think that it's that out of character for females to attack other females, specifically non-hunting community females attacking people who they just don't understand what they're doing. But I think it goes both ways, and I know, Jana, you probably see the same thing. A lot of men, I think that stems from jealousy or ego. They're just kind of like, I've been working hard for so long. Why don't I get all of this attention or these followers? But I don't think that we should exclude females from being the ones who attack, and they probably have different reasons for those attacks. Maybe they just don't understand what they are attacking. But what I did love about that situation is how everybody in the community rallied behind the person who was being attacked. And everyone stood up and said, no, that's not okay. We support you for who you are. You don't have to change anything you're doing. You've got a community around you. And I think that's the biggest takeaway from it is, those things are going to happen. We live in a world where people have access to us and people are able to make comments and say what they want. But you have a community around you of support. And you know that what they're saying isn't true anyway. So you can kind of move on from it a little faster.
I personally have been more attacked by guys than women, but you're right, Julie, in that aspect. Years back, it did seem like the thing to do. And I also think it's important to remember that a lot, at least for me, when I do my little, Jules is 10 times the instigator I am, but a lot of the women attacks, they're not even real accounts, first of all, like often back in the day. My biggest attack was in the beginning, a second season of Skullbound. So this was, my gosh, 12 years ago, but it was a guy. And he was going to the level of making extremely rude comments, but also saying I was a poacher, all these things, which is breaking tout law. He was trying to intentionally hurt my business. And he was posting on like DirecTV's site and all these, and I didn't know how to handle it. And long story short, I got an attorney and we sent a cease and desist and like, I'm going to sue you for intentionally trying to harm my business, blah, blah, blah. I do think it's really important to remember a lot of these accounts are fake. And it is, when you're right, Jules, we put ourselves out there. It comes with the territory in whether you're in hunting or in the gun specific industry, or, whether you're a bikini model or whatever, you're going to get hate. I've talked to Jules plenty of times about this. My answer to the hate is ban, block, delete. Right. Like, I have 5,000 people on my ban list, my block list. I delete their comments. It's my social media. I can do whatever I want with it. So I'm going to ban them. I don't have to. have to, let their comments stay on there. With the most current situation you're talking about, it's so funny because you're right. It was a mainstream person ripping on an outdoors woman who, gets muddy and dirty and it's so funny how women and men, I don't think it's specific to either sex, attack somebody um brutally and viciously. And number one, they don't even know the person at all. And to me, it's so funny that someone in the mainstream world, knowing nothing about hunting, fishing, outdoors, attacks another person and truly has no clue of how the real world works.
Correct.
No clue about where their food comes from, no clue about gun safety, personal protection. They wouldn't even know how to take care of themselves. Women who are ripping on the outdoor woman, they have, in my opinion, are so much more clueless about the reality of life than outdoors women who can take care of themselves, who can sustain themselves with food, who can defend themselves, whether it's in their home or in the mountains, whether it's the two-legged predators or the four-legged predators. And it's just so ironic to me that, mainstreamers or actors or Hollywoodites, as we kind of like to call them, are going to rip on an outdoors woman when they wouldn't have the first clue of the strength it takes to be one.
Well, and not that I have a degree in psychology, because I do, but I also think that that sometimes people attack people who have something that they want that they don't feel like they can achieve.
Wow.
Yeah.
And so this mainstream person may have something deep inside of them that says, "How wouldn't that be so cool? Like, wouldn't that be kind
Yeah.
of amazing to be the type of person who could put yourself out there in that way and to attain these types of," but they don't have the confidence or maybe the opportunity. Maybe they don't have people around them to give them those opportunities. And so the only thing they can do is attack and to reach out in that way, because it's any way to get in contact or to have some presence in the life of a person who has what you want. And, I think that when you kind of develop that mindset, when you grow up a little bit mentally and you realize this person's attacking me because they really want something that I have, it's not because they hate, you can kind of move past it a little faster. You can kind of go, "Oh, okay, well, that's sad. I'm really sad for you, and that sucks. But like, you should get outdoors and maybe try the things I'm doing because it would make you a happier person."
In the words of Dana Lash, oh, bless your heart.
Yeah.
Yeah. Right.
People attack her left or right. She'll, oh, bless your little heart. She'll actually screen grab the comment, bless your heart. And that is such a great point, Jules. It is truly about, I think, maybe feeling, whether it's something deep in their psyche or feeling threatened. And the funny thing about it is, we outdoors women, we have the best of both worlds. We can get dirty and downright grungy, and we can go arrow a deer for dinner, and we can, catch fish, and we can do all these things and sustain ourselves and protect ourselves. But we can also look as like $1,000,000. We can, if we want to put on a ball gown and we want to go to a banquet and we want to look like, straight up downtown New York, we can do that too. And it's just funny and ironic how that person attacked an outdoors woman, when it's funny. That's trying to put us in a little category, trying to downplay us, say we're rednecks and we're uneducated or a bunch of hillbillies or this or that, when quite frankly, it's the opposite. We have everything you have and more, in my opinion.
It's interesting how that particular situation got picked up by mainstream media and for a couple of days, and it was on major outlets. And it was just a departure from what our niche audience kind of in our space deals with daily, weekly, and you guys have been for years. And that really doesn't get a whole lot of limelight. But this one, there was something different about it. And it speaks to a larger double standard that is, in a world that's really like Wonka land right now. And, well, the social weirdness that we're living in 2024, it's just so odd that you have people that are women that are empowered, that are going out, everything you just said. They're self-sufficient, they're smart, able to execute all these hard things in the wild, and then still be mom, sister, grandmother, et al. At home, and then out in the public sphere, dress up in a ball gown and display their femininity. And
Yeah.
and when someone sees that, or they're so inclined, they got to crap all over them. for me, I don't have a psychology degree, so I can't speak to it. I just can't wrap my mind around it. The only thing I can come to is it is an insecurity, and it does come from a place of jealousy.
Well, I think this can also be a really good reminder for all of us, anybody who's in the public eye, even if it's just on social media, that the world is watching and they can be watching at any
Yeah.
time. And so the information and the content that you're putting out there, if you are a spokesperson for the industry in any way, is crucial. And so the people who now have a spotlight on this person and they're going back and digging through old posts and digging through everything that's ever been said or put out there in any way, that's why it's so important to have your mind right when you are representing the outdoor industry as a whole.
Yeah.
If the spotlight is shined on you, even for a negative reason in a moment, you have to be mindful that you're representing a lot of us who, really care about what we're doing in this space. And, that's a big responsibility for any public figure.
I love that. Oh, that is so true. Whether it's from, representing the hunting industry. Yeah, you're representing yourself, but you're so right, Jules, about yeah, we are all a collective whole and we are under attack. Like I think, especially with being a commissioner in Montana and being real, like all three of us super involved in the conservation world, we maybe understand a little bit better than maybe someone who's not of the attacks we get. And you, Fred, being involved in policy, the attacks that we're under, whether the antis are trying to remove all dogs in hunting, let's say, for example, or or our gun rights, which are constantly under attack, or our trapping rights, or the predator situation, which is so huge right now with the wolves in Wisconsin and the wolves in Colorado and mountain lions everywhere. It's just we are under such attack, and that is such a good reminder, Jules, that don't forget we're representing our lifestyle of whether it's hunting, fishing, trapping, gardening, homesteading, whatever it is, people are going to watch. And we need to remember to be, yeah, in to be cognizant of the fact that what you put out there is out there forever. And even if you take stuff off, it can be screen grabbed and all that. And that's a really good reminder, Jules, especially for the young girls that watch what we do and ask us, how do we get into hunting and all that kind of thing. It's important to remember. I wouldn't ever recommend that someone change who they are to stay authentic, but remember that all eyes are watching.
I think it's an
Yeah.
important point to drive home, and especially both of you giving voice to that. It seems commonplace or common sense, but if you think about it, we are not a full generation removed from the onset of social media, on-demand media. It's gonna take me, us becoming grandparents to impart that knowledge on a 2 generations removed, because we all grew up with this, late Gen Xers and, mid Gen Xers coming into this. We're that fine group of people that had a rotary phone and then have iPhones and understand both worlds, right? So being able to speak to those shortfalls, those pitfalls that, we thought were innocent as we're coming up, with freaking MySpace or AOL chat rooms or whatever it was, rolling through to where we are now. Like these are, especially as it comes to our space, it's such an important point to knock home. But again, it's kind of just ignorance of just going through it. It's not on purpose. And I think as we get better about it, these lessons, especially for, my daughter who's 13 later this year, going on 27, it's like, we gotta reel some of this in. I know you want all this access, but believe me, if I had this access when I was your age, I probably wouldn't have a job. So, thank God I didn't have these on-demand cameras.
Yeah, it's a beautiful thing and dangerous at the same time. Like both Julie and I have talked about the fact we have so many friends through social media. I have friends, I literally call them girlfriends I've never met, that we've just developed a cool bond through Instagram or Facebook or whatever. At the same time, we've got to remember that it's a dangerous thing. We're getting propaganda thrown at us all the time, and teenage life is difficult enough. I cannot even imagine being a teenager now, and the stresses that because of social media, and the fact that it is truly such a fake world. Like it's really most people featuring their highlight, featuring the good moments, and then both boys and girls and men and women, we look at that and oftentimes I think we think, gosh, they've got it all. They've got this, they've got that, or they're always happy, or they're always this, that. And, truly it is sort of your highlight reel, and that's not real life either. So yeah, those are all super good points.
Yeah,
Why
I
don't we
think
just all write a kid's book together, guys? Come on.
I think it's also really wise to have grace for young people.
Really?
I mean, honestly, if somebody ever found my MySpace page, I would be mortified. Like, let's be real. I would just crawl in a hole and move to Mexico and never be seen again. It would be horrible. Like, we all were young once. And so sometimes when you see these young people making choices, we can be very judgy sometimes because we're grown-ups. But you have to have grace for them because we were all young ones too, So I try to kind of find that balance of expecting a lot for the people who represent us, but also having grace for the ones who just haven't been through those experiences yet.
I'm too old for MySpace, but you could go back and look at my yearbooks. And you could see my 10-inch bangs, and my, my
better time.
my wardrobe that looked like I was, heading off to a Motley Crue concert. But yeah. But no, it's a good point. I'm just being funny, but yeah, that's a good point, Jules. And really life is evolutionary. And when I grew up, you didn't have people looking at your stuff. You didn't have to go back and go, I can't believe I posted that.
Right.
We didn't, it might be that I can't believe I did that. But like I said, that's in the black and white yearbook. Completely different. But that's a good lesson, Jules, about having grace for people in general. Like I just had a situation with a really good friend of mine who I feel like just wasn't himself. And I have to remind myself, and that's the beauty of having a bestie like Jules, is we talk through everything and we remind ourselves like maybe that person is going through something super challenging and you've got to have grace for them. I think that that's a really good reminder, Jules, for everybody, not just social media wise, but everyone in our lives. Even if you get that crabby checkout lady at the grocery store or a waiter who doesn't have any manners, which we could get into that too. But maybe having grace for them, and maybe they're having a bad day, a bad week, bad month. They're going through something we don't understand. It's crazy in this social media world that we live in. Maybe there's pages out there that discuss things like that, but I've never seen them. Like these are life rules, that are kind of changing from how we were brought up and the manners that we were given. And, the customer is always right. And you always be polite to people and that kind of thing. It is definitely a different world we live in right now, but to always have grace is a good quality.
There's this weird sense of entitlement that a younger generation seems, because they've grown up and they don't know any different, that they think they're entitled to respond and they are entitled to anything up here gets to come out here, and they lack this social filter. And I don't know if that's a lack of home raising or it's just a function of the ecosystem they're in, whether it's in a scholastic environment coming up through college, like this is what their ecosystem does. But like, I would have never have condescended to speak to people the way some people do. And you guys have been victims of it, your list, and they just, and it's like no barriers. And, people used to be accountable for that stuff in a sort of physical way. Not anymore. People hardly see each other in person. So there is really no accounting for some of this.
Yeah.
Yeah, I just always remind myself that, like, if people saw me in person walking down the street, they would never say that stuff. People find bravery online because they'll never really see you face to face. So that's kind of comforting. Like people in my real life, who I interact with face to face in person, nobody talks to me like that. I mean, that's just like the fact of life. It's very rare for someone to walk up to you on the street and be like, "Your hair is hideous." Like no one does that. So it's all kind of an online problem. And I think when you separate yourself from, I've removed myself from a lot of the online stuff over the years, and not for any reason. I just got really busy and I'm running a business, so I don't have a lot of time for it. But I kind of remind myself that like no one comes up to me and says mean things in person, so I must not be that bad.
And a good reminder too is like if someone, I see this all the time, especially on like wildlife division pages, like, Montana FWP or Utah, Fish and Wildlife Department or whatever. You go on there and read, there are so many rude comments from people I know. And I think, wow, this is what I think in my mind. You must be really unhappy because no one who lives a good life and is a happy person and has a lot of gratitude talks like that. Like when you're coming out and even if it's on a hunting picture or it's because of a new, game and fish, legislation that just came out or whatever it is, and you start swearing and cussing and, those kind of comments or calling everybody a bunch of idiots. What I've seen a lot lately is you guys are such a bunch of idiots. Shame on you, first of all. I think shame on you for you can have an opinion about something and delivery is everything. Give your opinion, but once you start name calling and once you start swearing at
Mhm.
somebody, you lose all
Yeah,
credibility. You really do. And like I just think delivery means a lot. And it's another thing with social media. But I also think that anyone who talks like that or is going to be degrading on someone else's hunting pictures or commenting on any kind of post, if you're going to be degrading, you must be a really unhappy person because no one who is a really happy life talks that way to people, you know?
I mean, what your example there of the fishing game things, you and I have both been commissioners in our respective states. And so often, it comes from a place of ignorance and kind of back to that entitlement. I grew up doing it this way, and by golly, that's how it's got to stay. And since I've done it for 40 years, I don't care what the law is, but they don't in our own space. They don't take the time to be accountable. We're on this show constantly talking about know who your legislator is, know who your state senator is, have access to these people, send them a how do you do? I'm so and so from this town, and I want to be able to be a resource for you. And people don't do that. It's just easier to complain and moan than it is to have a
Yep.
little skin in the game. And that's take a 5-minute Google search, figure out who these people are, what their persuasions are, and how you can engage them and have meaningful conversations to enact change or championing something that they may be doing on your behalf instead of just running your gap.
Oh, for sure. And like, are they even involved? Most of the time they're not. I would throw back questions at them all the time of like, well, did you go to your RAC meeting or did you go to your regional, convention meeting? No, I got to work. Well, yeah, so do the rest of us. Like, you don't go to the meetings. You don't belong to conservation groups. You're not out fundraising for what you believe in. So, yeah, you're allowed to have your opinion, but it certainly doesn't mean as much if you're not getting that background knowledge of whatever the situation might be. And, that's for, like you would say, like commissioner positions, or when someone comes out and says, we're changing this rule, or we're adding this season, or we're taking away tags, or whatever it is. But then there's the people who just comment negatively on hunting pictures too. But the same goes, like, instead of being so, like, first of all, they must not have been paying attention in kindergarten class, where if you don't have something nice to say, don't say it at all. And secondly, like, be more positive. You can definitely be frustrated about stuff and you don't like the way, people are doing things, but get involved, first of all, get some knowledge behind you, and then delivery is everything. But I don't know. It can get super frustrating, but you're right. We need to all be better stewards of what we're trying to protect and what we love here.
So that's a pretty decent segue to where I wanted to go next, and insofar as your positive interactions, more flies with honey than vinegar kind of mindset, and dealing with policymakers, on for our organization, that's all we do every day in and day out. We're working at the state capitals, working on the Hill, state agency partners, and trying to advocate, trying to educate, champion the good, put the brakes on the bad. But for the general public, I've referenced it before in the past. There was a social study on hunter participation, and the fastest growing demographic was more or less the mom age women. And what they derived from that study was that if mom was involved in the shooting sports and the hunting space, angling, it brought the kids along and allowed for more participation. And then from an R3 perspective, you saw that more carry over. To that end, when we have policy come out, if you had the opportunity to sit down, especially in front of female legislators who probably in large part just by percentages aren't involved in this space, no matter what side of the aisle they're on. I'm not saying like give them the elevator pitch, but knowing something like I just threw out there, that moms come along and the empowerment of that and what that does for the family. Do you lead with that, or what if you're sitting down in front of them? What would you say? What do you want to say to them?
Go ahead, Jules.
So, I mean, it is true that, we do know that if the mother of a household is into the outdoors, whether that is hunting or not, if it's shooting sports, if it's gun related at all, the children are much more likely to also pick up the same hobbies and interests. And, I think that there have been a lot of organizations and foundations who put, systems in place to make females feel more comfortable, more confident, more empowered, more educated in all of those situations. But when it goes all the way up to legislation, sometimes I think people are so removed from that fact pulling at their heartstrings that it's difficult to get the message across. It's like, oh, okay, yeah, so if mom hunts, the kids do, so what? But they don't realize that that is a huge part of what we're all focused on. So sometimes, all of the data is there. It's just how do you tell the story in a way where it really, gets to people, where how they can actually react to it in a human way. So when we're talking about sitting down with, Congress or legislation or, anything that's coming into play where it can actually make a huge difference for the outdoor community, I think that messaging is the biggest question that we need to answer. How do you actually tell that story where it's data driven, but also, makes it more realistic for them to fully understand what it is. And, we know a lot of different organizations and, companies and even just individuals who started groups where they are taking active steps to make sure that these women have the opportunities to, to go to camps or to, classes or whatever that is. And, people like Jana and myself and a lot of the other women who have been in this industry for a long time, we're supporting that from behind the scenes as much as we can, but sometimes that's not even enough. We can support it all we want. We can say all the right things and be in all the right places. But really, how do you tell that story? So, like Jana, doing her work with the commission and, women really getting involved at a grassroots level, I think is really crucial. And more women need to do that because otherwise, it's just words on paper and people don't fully understand what story we're telling.
I think too, like it reminds me of, Jules knows this story, but it reminds me of a conversation I had with an anti-hunter vegan sitting on an airplane. And I will preface this by saying it is the only time I've ever had this type of beautiful conversation with an anti-hunter who's also a vegan. But I sat next to this African American gentleman on a flight probably 7 or 8 years ago. And I sit down and I say hi. He says hi, and he says to me first, "So what do you do?" And I said, and he was dressed in a suit, just sharp looking gentleman, such a nice guy. And I said, "Well, I host a hunting television show." And his first words were, "You're not one of those NRA nut jobs, are you?" And I said, "As a matter of fact, I am." And that's how we got to talking. And we had an hour conversation that was truly beautiful. Um, it was, first of all, he was open-minded and super intelligent. He was actually a professor from McGill. And so, intelligence was already there. But he grew up in inner city Chicago. Guns were the enemy. He had friends killed by guns.
Wow.
He had never, ever been hunting. And he was a vegan because of his, beliefs, not health purposes, but beliefs about animals shouldn't be killed. And I just told him from the heart what hunting did for me growing up and the confidence it gave me and what it was like to spend time with my dad. And that was a connection I know that he really made. Like this was one-on-one time with my dad, which was so special to me and really the reason my dad and I are so close today. And then we talked about how, I didn't get into handguns till later on in life, but I had a shotgun in my hand when I was 10 years old, and a BB gun, and then graduated to rifles and archery. And we talked, and we only grew up 2 hours from each other, mind you, but completely different. And I got an email from him the next day that said, you have my mind spinning. And it didn't say I'm going to go run out and have a steak tonight. And it didn't say he's going to be a hunter. But it said you have my mind spinning because I've never looked at it like that. He's never looked at guns as being such a beautiful thing and giving me confidence and making me feel secure when I'm all alone. And, I got a handgun in my pickup truck when I'm driving along. And the confidence that gives me, and being in my house alone, and, and gathering my own food and what that was like. And he just had never heard about it from like that perspective. And he wrote me just the most beautiful email. And I think of it all the time. It was literally one of those God moments because I think about it all the time and I reflect back to that. And it was that our deliveries back and forth were very respectful, very honest. And, I understand completely where he was coming from. And he understood a little bit now where I'm coming from. And I think that's the key to whoever we're talking about, whether we're talking with our legislators or we're talking to social media. I think it's really important to make that connection to people of we are not a bunch of, mainstream media would love to portray us as a bunch of heartless bubbas shooting from the pickup truck and leaving animals lie and all this kind of thing. And I think if we can explain to people we're animal lovers, we all love animals, that we use everything we can from the animals, of the life lessons that hunting or the shooting sports brings us, and try to make that connection, that human connection with somebody else, and what truly hunting or guns or trapping means to wildlife ecosystems and what it means to our lives. I think that is the key. It's delivery, and to make them understand the deeper connections behind the hunt or behind why you love guns. That's to me, I think, a huge part of the whole puzzle.
Yeah, I think another part of that puzzle is that the person who you're communicating to has to be willing to listen.
Yeah. Yep.
And a lot of times in mainstream media, for example, you can have somebody out there creating video content that is legal and ethical and beautiful and tells a great story. And if you put that on YouTube, they're going to shut it right
Yep.
down because they're not willing to listen to the reasons why that is legal and ethical and beautiful. And so when you go to somebody who is in full support of that lifestyle, that video is amazing. Like, oh yeah, that the whole world should see this, right? So it's all, what's the saying? The purpose of communication is the response that you receive. And, it's so true. It's like, who's your audience? Who are you speaking to? And when you're taking them this information, like the guy sitting next to Jana on the airplane, he was willing to receive that information. There was something that opened up his heart where he was like, oh, I'm willing to hear you out on this. This is really fascinating because I'm interested in what you had to say. A lot of people aren't that way. And, it's an uphill battle. And I think we've all known that for years and years in this industry. But thank goodness, we do have some people who are willing to listen, and there is forward progression in a lot of ways. But I think, beating your head against a wall, talking to somebody who is so close-minded is it's impossible. So finding the right people to speak to about those issues is, key number one.
And it's also why I went to Carbon TV. Let me just plug that real quick. When I was trying to decide what to do with Skullbound, do I want to continue on network TV? A lot of my partners were really pushing me to go digital just because I truly believe it's where TV is headed. It's just so many reasons why. You can share it multiple times. You watch it whenever you want. People want their content now and when they want to watch it. But the reason I didn't take my show to YouTube is I have friends who did. I have friends with gun channels. I have friends with hunting shows who literally get the big red label, warning label on YouTube, or they literally gotten their pages shut down by YouTube. And not to say you can't go there too, but the beautiful thing of a network like Carbon TV is it's owned by hunters. It's never going to do that to us. And there's, us who have our careers in the industry who it's scary for my friends on YouTube who've gotten their pages shut down and stuff. And I just think it's a beautiful thing when you've got a network like Carbon TV who stands so tall and strong behind us hunters and shooters.
Yeah, I second everything you just said, Jana.
Yeah.
You wonder, the beauty of that one-on-one interaction that you had on that plane, naturally you want to bottle that up, right? And then be able to give it to people. How do you do that on a mass scale, right? Like Jules said, you're going to have people that are just 10% of the population just committed to hating our guts, right? We've always talked about this squishy 80, and maybe that number has gone down a little bit in the last couple of years, but there's a majority of people that are there. And if the messaging and the storytelling is right, you can have that audience play more to our favor and tendencies. I don't know the answer. I'm not asking you guys to give the answer unless you have a thought on it. But it's for me, it's just like this big meta question. Like if you could figure that part out, man, we could be doing some good. I'm not talking about recruiting people either. I'm not like, let's bring everyone in the fold, because I believe R3 has a cap. Like there's only so much resource out there. So I'm not like, bring those 80% onto the landscape because it can't handle it. There is a carrying capacity for hunters on the landscape. What I'm asking for is people to either stay indifferent to our community or support us. Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off, Jules.
No, I think that people like Jana are doing that on a daily basis. The video content that's being created out there, those of us in the community, we watch it for entertainment because we're big fans, or we just want to live vicariously in some way. But there are a lot of people who are not in the hunting community who also watch that content. There are millions and millions of them every day, every month. And they're watching it for another reason. Maybe they're just curious about it. Maybe they want some type of education. And so, with Jana, let's use her as an example out there, creating that video content, appearing at all of these events around the country, putting herself out there on social media, spreading the message, actually, getting her hands dirty, doing the work, in every single aspect. I think that is how you tell that story. I think, and Jana's not the only one. There are so many examples of people in this industry who really live and breathe it, who really are creating that. And that video content, that's not cheap to create. No. Like, let's be real. That's not something where you're like, oh, I've got some free time today, I'm going to go create a video. No, that's a huge investment. And that's a lot of time and effort and thought that goes into that. So when Jana's out there creating these things, whether that's, social media or episodes, it is actively taking steps in the right direction, because not just hunters are watching that. That's people outside. And, like, to touch on the Carbon TV side, our distribution goes far outside of the hunting community. We're on every major endpoint that exists, Roku, Apple TV. Even like if you go to Walmart and buy a new Vizio television, we're preloaded in the software. So every single person who owns a Vizio, it's right there free from. So there's a really good example of how every single person has access to content that's really meaningful that people like Jana have invested into. And it's telling those conservation stories, and it's telling the stories of connection and why this is so important to them in their life. And I think that is something that has to be protected.
I got to tell you something that's going to crack you up, Jules. So yesterday, I have this guy who always, probably once a month, shares him watching Skullbound Chronicles. And he said, I want to get into bow fishing. And I'm like, oh my gosh, you need to get an AMS bow. Like, they're the best, because then you don't got to mess with your regular archery bow. And he's like, I wonder if they sell them here. And I went back and I looked in his profile, and there's really nothing with it. I said, where's here? And he's like, Croatia. I had no idea you could watch Skullbound Chronicles in Croatia. So, like,
that's so funny.
I just think that's so funny. And I kept thinking about that while I was listening to you talk. But I appreciate all the kind words, Jules. Of course, I'll pay you later.
Yeah.
But really, truly, it is a good thing that, like, I'm really just on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. I'm not on TikTok or anything else like that. But it is good that they have friends of friends. It's not just the people that follow you are seeing your stuff. And even though it's the majority are those that follow, you still have friends of friends or non-followers see your stuff in the feed. Again, another reminder to always remember lots of eyeballs are watching, but also that is how we reach that squishy 80%. And for those of you who don't know, it's kind of thought of now as 10% of us are hunters, which is actually a lot lower now. But this is what we used to say. 10% are hunters, 10% are antis, like absolutely against. Then there's the 80%ers that, they don't know any hunters. They never really thought about it. They didn't grow up with any. They don't know anything about it. And they're kind of indifferent. Those are the ones we need to reach. And it isn't like I agree with you, Fred. It's not to say everybody come on board, because they're not. Number one, they're not going to. We just need them to understand that we're animal lovers, that our dollars are the dollars that are protecting wildlife in this country, that there are animals because we hunt animals. We need them to understand that just so they support it. So when there is a ballot box initiative or there's, something they can vote on or write in about, or that they understand the bigger picture and they're not just dealing with their emotions, because there is so much propaganda sent out there. I mean, I remember one year my mom gave $10 to like the World Wildlife Federation, and then she's getting all these postcards and my mom, stop it. Like, you need to give $10 to the NWTF for the Mule Deer Foundation, for crying out loud. And she'd get these Save the Wolf postcards with the little cute puppies on the front, the wolf puppies, and there's so much propaganda sent out there. And if you don't have anyone who's a hunter to ask or reflect, or they're going to win. They're going to get their messaging across to the squishy 80%ers. But I do think it's important that we remember that we're in front of them too, whether it's through friends of friends or non-followers in the feed or suggestions. Lately it seems like my Instagram feed is filled with suggestions. I'm like, I don't follow that person. Yep. What? They're just suggestions. So that's how we reach the squishy 80% in my mind.
Yeah, and so there are 2 points come out of your comments that I want to hit on. So first, touching that 80% and with your storytelling and getting them to be a little bit more than indifferent is exactly what you said. For those ballot referendums, I think 23 states out of 50 have state constitutions amended for right to hunt, fish language, and that's happened. That's the thing. We're trying to get that done in every state. So when these are put on a ballot, and the state legislature has to go through its process, they have to get that 66% plus one, and then bring it to the public to approve after it goes through this arduous system of checks and balances. And we have HSUS and the like just pouring money in a marketing campaign to buck what we're saying, which, we're always kind of cash strapped when it comes to these things. It's why it's so important to have that 80% in your state to be like, yeah, I'm not participating, but I don't really see a problem with that. Yeah, sure, people should have the right to hunt and fish. Why not? And most of them don't even realize it. They don't realize it's a privilege, And so that's one point I want to hit on. And then the other part with your propaganda from WWF there and their cute wolves, if they only knew what you and I were talking about in the beginning, we were coming on waiting for Jules, is that the funding mechanism, what our community does when we buy licenses, when we buy guns and ammo and all the other accoutrement that gets that PR 11% excise tax to it, we do more at less than 10% of the population for those flipping wolves that are great and then not so great depending where they're at. But we as sportsmen and women do way more for those endangered species, for those challenged species, and then the non-game species than HSUS, than WWF will ever do with all their stuffed animals and their ad campaigns, because it's been borne out that 99% of that money that people give goes in their friggin' pockets and does nothing for their mission.
Yep. Oh, yeah. I love it. Yeah, a lot of people don't know HSUS is the Humane Society of the United States, and it is not your local Humane Society, which I support. Like, I used to go down and give, whether it was dog beds or blankets or even cash. I used to have cash left over from my dad's foundation, and we would always go down to the local Humane Society every year. I totally support the local animal shelters. That is absolutely not what HSUS is. HSUS is one of the biggest anti-hunting groups out there. I don't know now, but you used to be able to Google it even a few years ago, and they had a big warning label like on their website, because watchdogs finally came out and said what a crooked organization that they are. But just a reminder that we all need to band together to join our conservation groups, not just our messaging, but to put our money where our mouth is outside of what we already do with licensings, tags, duck stamps, you name it. But to join those conservation groups, donate. If you don't have any money to donate, maybe you've got something that you can donate in terms of an auction item. Maybe you can donate your time, go to the banquet and offer to help set up, offer to help clean up. It's so great. Like I said, I live at all these banquets because my husband's an auctioneer, but it's so great. Every banquet, you see all the kids afterwards, they're sweeping the big brooms around the floor in the gymnasiums, cleaning up, getting rid of all the garbage, putting stuff back in the trailers for the next banquet. They're just helping out. And it's an easy way to get your kids involved too. But we need to pony up and we already put our money where our mouth is, but if we can't do that, put some time in.
Yeah, especially in our own space. Like, that's always a challenge.
Yeah.
Just buying a hunting and fishing license is not enough. It's just not. And some people are going to get grouchy hearing that, but it's the truth. It is not enough.
Yep. Agreed. Fact checked.
Yeah, indeed. Jules, you look like you had a comment.
No, I think you're both absolutely right. I enjoy hearing what you were saying. I think that, even if people don't have expendable income where they can make huge donations or even buy, maybe some people can't afford, to go just buy a bunch of hunting licenses in different states. Time is always helpful too. There are so many projects that need volunteers on the ground helping out, whether that is, reparations or, what's the like the safe wildlife fencing, right? So there's so many projects like that. And all of the NGOs, the conservation organizations, foundations, on their websites, they have all of those projects, right, listed. So it's accessible to everybody in your area. You can find a way to get involved. Even if you don't have a lot of money to spend, you can still help kind of move things forward in the right direction for wildlife in your area. And I think that that's a really important point for people who want their kids to respect wildlife, to really understand why it is we're working towards these goals. It's not just about, oh, let's go buy a hunting license and go shoot a deer. No, it's like, how do we care for those animals in the meantime? How do we make sure that, that everything's in place so the people who are going and buying those hunting licenses have, a fair chance at a healthy population?
Yeah, spot on. And I can speak from experience, having worked with volunteers with another organization, that I always used to tell them, like, you can spend all the money you want at this banquet and it's appreciated, and sign up for your $35 annual membership is appreciated, is necessary. But the most valuable thing you can give an organization in our space is your time. You can never get it back.
Yeah.
And you do that, you're doing that of your own validity. I mean, it's easy to give a 20. That's easy and you can walk away. But when you invest time, you're never getting back. That for me, and I think for both of you, that means a lot. And then that's also, those volunteer hours, that's a paycheck or a resource. The money can go elsewhere and not be allocated to man hours, which is just so important.
Yeah,
Agreed.
I can say, to touch on that, I don't remember every hunting license I've ever bought because there's been so many, but I remember every single project I've gone to help with. I do. Like, I can recall every single one of them, who it was with, what state it was in. It was so memorable and made me fall more in love with the local wildlife and the resources and, nature in general. I think those things are just more valuable as humans when you really have good intentions towards, wildlife.
As we close here, and again, I want to be respectful. It's always a fast conversation with both of you when we get to do this. I want to ask, in your states, Jules, I didn't realize you just moved to Arizona, but between Arizona and Michigan, and then Jana and Utah, are there any specific heavy hitting items you can make our audience aware of? Maybe our team's already on the ground working them, but for the public at large, what should they be paying attention to as sessions are in the middle or coming to a close, and that they can get involved?
Yeah, so I think the biggest thing that the biggest conversation that's happening in my world right now, and it's not so much in Arizona, but it will be eventually. It's more in Colorado. Is, houndsmen are under attack. My boyfriend is a houndsman, and so it's very close to our heart. And there's a lot of good information that's being put out about that. I know Robbie Kroger just released Lionheart, or it's about to be released. He's shown it at a few different events. Jana hosted one of them. And when you watch that film, it just tells such a beautiful story of why it's crucial for houndsmen to exist and the relationship with dogs and how it's actually better for the game. You're not just shooting an animal across a canyon, you're getting up to it in a tree so you can tell the
Tell you,
sex and age and really have a more educated decision on taking that animal. I think that's the biggest conversation that we're having at this point is protecting those rights, protecting the legacy that is houndsmen, how crucial that is to, for our hunting culture. I know, Jana, it's kind of close to your heart too. I know your husband is also quite the houndsman. And, it is a big conversation. It's one thing that every time it comes up, it gets emotional because you don't want that to be taken away. There's so many reasons why it's crucial for people to be on the same page when all of this is coming up in legislation.
Yeah. In terms of Utah or where I just came from, Montana, issues, honestly, I'm going to go to the next level and I'm going federal. I was on a call last week with a bunch of, I would just call them big heavy hitters in the conservation world. And it was a super eye opening phone call for me because, in general, hunters don't go vote. And that is insane. And we all need to just get on the voting bandwagon. I'm not going to tell I'm not even talking about telling people who to vote for. I'm telling people in general to go vote. If you're not registered to vote, all you got to do is look it up. There's a super easy link. Am I registered to vote in my home state? Just type that in or something. And there's easy to check to see if you're registered, if you just moved, like Jules and I. Hunters as a whole do not get out and vote. And that is shameful because a lot of this, what's going on now, is called trickle-down effect, and it's politics, and it's not science-based decision-making, it's politics. And so we need to get out and we need to vote. I don't care and I'm talking about on the national level, but then I'm talking about in lower, every chance you have an opportunity, we need to step up. I don't care what an inconvenience it might be for that day. We need to go vote. I think that's the most important message that I could talk about.
And rightfully to point out that, the big sexy stuff on the billboards on the TV screens is happening at the federal level, but there's not nearly as much happening at the federal that is happening in those state houses. And it is asinine that people have a hard enough time getting out every 4 years, never mind midterms. And then some people are voting every year in their states and in their counties, and they don't even show up, man. And it's like, you have the power in your hands. Like, and without putting R's and D's on it, I can just speak from the conservation community or those who absolutely hate our guts. The people that absolutely hate our guts have it figured out, have for years. They have a mission. They're dedicated to that mission, and they work towards that mission every single day. And whether there's infighting or not, you wouldn't know it because they're all so laser focused on defeating us. For whatever reason, and this plays into politics too in a much bigger scope, our side, we can't get out of our own way. We keep voting because we think it's, well, if there's a certain letter in front of somebody, we're going to be protected. Man, it hasn't worked for 3-4 decades. Keep saying the same thing every election cycle for those that do go vote, like, oh, I'm just going to do the same old. Well, that hasn't worked. You need to change your formula. And what really needs to happen, not only to go vote, our community needs to get on the same page and take what's going on that side, their playbook, and apply it to us, be laser focused, and get friggin' involved. And until we figure that out and unstuck our heads from whatever hole it's in, we're not going to have nice things, and things are going to be taken away.
Yeah. I think it's actually the one thing we can do is to make because we all have friends of friends and friends, right? And social media. Make our inner circle, if just that, our family members and our closest of friends, make them accountable. Are you going to vote? Why not?
Mm-hmm.
Or yes, okay, great. Are you? Well, I don't know. Why not? Like, open up that dialogue and ask them. And maybe they don't even know how. Maybe they don't know how to get registered. Maybe they don't know where they go. Maybe they just moved to a new state. Whatever it is, I think it's important to keep our inner circle, if nothing else, informed and accountable. That's one thing I think everybody could do.
I think just normalizing the conversation. Sometimes people try to avoid political conversations in general, whether that's on social media or just around the dinner table. But I think normalizing it in a way that's acceptable is a really crucial step. Like, with Jana just bringing that up, I think Jana has a way of saying things with such passion that makes you just like, there's no way you could ever argue with her because she is right. Like, that's why she's my best friend. She's the smartest girl I know. But like, you hear somebody who knows what they're talking about and who understands the impact that it could have. And when you talk about it in that way, that is normalizing the conversation, where it's okay to talk about the fact that this is something that is not happening, that needs to happen. And these are the reasons why. This is fact-based. And I think that if more people would be brave and stand up like what Jana does and just like put it out there and say, these are the reasons why I'm passionate about it, that could change the world.
This morning, as I was working out, I was listening to Judges, the story of Samson. And this isn't going to be a religious comment. You don't have to be religious to get what I'm saying here. But the story of Samson and most of Judges is that you have these passionate people and they don't control these characters, and Samson doesn't control his passion, which makes him weak. It's a weakness. So he just reacts and does these things, and eventually he dies. His eyes are gouged out because he doesn't know how to check his emotion. It's a cautionary tale right now for our community when you're having these conversations to keep your emotions in check. My blood boils, my adrenaline spikes, and sometimes, like, I know my face will get red and I can't hide it. I'm like, I turn into the heat miser. I can't hide these physical features, but I can control my emotions, and you got to be cognizant. And if you're going into verbal battle with someone that hates your guts, you got to suppress it and be measured. And if you can't, just keep your mouth shut. I mean, it's easier to keep your mouth shut, come back later and think about these things than to react in the moment, because that's what so many of them are looking for. They're trying to set the trap, have you hit the tripwire, and then blow up.
Yeah. Yeah. Again, that's delivery.
Yeah.
Delivery is everything. Have those difficult conversations, but in a way that is approachable. And I get heated too. There's a reason my nickname is Sherman, as in tank. but yeah, it's a good reminder to check your emotions, speak with logic, or at least your understanding of the situation, and passion. Like I honestly, I have friends who are very different than I am, politically, hobbies, you name it. But we all really respect one another, and I think that that's super important, is to keep that respect and keep those emotions in check, have those honest conversations, and then, sometimes agree to disagree. But I also think it's important that we keep everybody in our inner circle accountable,
Well said.
I agree.
Yeah.
Well, with that, I don't think the whole conversation has had a complete negative overtone, but we obviously have our.
Let's talk about Game of Thrones again.
Yes, indeed. End it. No, I mean, obviously there's challenges, and there still remains challenges with women in the outdoors, and kind of put a bow on it, bringing up that first topic. It still troubles me that there's still women that go to a range to shoot or want to go to a mentor, learn to turkey hunt, and still have apprehension because there's so much machismo in the room, and that is a barrier for entry for them automatically. They just don't think they're welcome, when in fact they are, in I think 99% of the cases. And it just hurts them even more when fellow females are just dogging on them, and we can all be better about it. And it would be great to see the ladies in our space, in one giant roar, stand up for people, which I think in this last case happened. But again, there's still work to be done, and people like you, Jana and Jules, are at the tip of the spear, leading the way, and we're lucky to have you. And all the little girls coming up are lucky to have you.
Oh, thank you so much.
We appreciate that.
For sure. Well,
thanks
you. Thanks for sharing your time and your stories. And I'm gonna have to do just a Game of Thrones special at some point.
I'm gonna text you guys later when I'm watching it. We're gonna start a group text about Game of Thrones.
For sure.
Okay, sounds good.
Have a great spring. Be safe out there. Keep us posted on your adventures. We'd love to let our audience know how you guys are faring, and all the things you're learning about Arizona as a new home for you, Jules.
Thank you.
Thanks so much for hanging out.
Good to see you, Fred.
Yep, you too.
See you later. Thanks, Fred.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you so much to our guests, Jana and Jules. As I said, it's always a fast conversation and enjoyable getting reconnected with the two of them, and just both present so well. They know exactly the right way to tell our story, to communicate. They're just so very good at what they do, as evident by this program here, in my humble opinion. For those of you that hung through the first 10 minutes, thank you. Some of you, I realize, may not be GOT fans. But look, that's the fun part of this, right? I mean, not everything is so very strict and policy oriented. We're people too. And I certainly enjoy pulling the curtain back and showing some of that personality for everybody. They're great at what they do, but they also have hobbies and pop culture interests, as we all do. And I think that's good to share with you guys, the audience, and we can connect on other things as well. And even those who, this is where I often, when I get into a conversation with someone that doesn't appreciate what our community does, or even, just hunting on the face of it, or shooting sports, But we connect on other things like, oh, well, you're not so bad. Well, yeah, no kidding. We're not defined by just one thing, right? As so many people tend to do, unfortunately, nowadays. So, again, thanks for hanging through the GOT talk. And I hope you enjoyed the remainder of that conversation. I think some of the biggest takeaways from that episode, from this episode, the presentation of sportsmen and women out in the public, the engagement side of it, controlling those emotions, keeping yourself in check, even though, because we're so passionate, we care about this stuff. We love this stuff. It is our lifestyle. And when people attack it, it is personal. But rising above that and not feeding into the trap that is set as a strategy, right? And like we said there at the wrap, I mean, obviously there's still work to be done for females in our space. And hopefully with ambassadors like Jana and Jules and others out there who do a fantastic job, we get better and a new generation of young ladies comes up through and can continue to represent us, and even better still, especially, with the acknowledgement of the three of us didn't grow up with social media. So we that came about for all of us as adults, but this current generation, my kids, my kids aren't on social media, but they are aware of it, and this is a thing. This is part of their culture, so they really don't know any difference. I suspect they'll navigate it and be better about it, and hopefully learn from some of the shortfalls of the first gen users of that. So anyway, without being redundant, great show. Really appreciate the conversation. Thank you so much to both of them. Just absolute pros and all stars, and look forward to having them back at some point. Wherever you are, thank you for bringing us along. If you're on a turkey trek, a turkey adventure, I hope many of you are getting a feel, or maybe on the water, wetting a line. So many places offshore fishing is coming in. A lot of the trout streams and ponds across the country are open. Largemouth bass fishing in the south. I mean, there's just so much opportunity across this country to enjoy. Here in the Northeast, the stripers are running. I think I saw the migration is definitely on in the Chesapeake, getting out towards Montauk Sound. Schoolie-sized stripers in the southern part of New England making their way to the Cape and around the northern part of the Cape. So around here, I like to call it the spring surf and turf between turkey season and that striper fishing, and black sea bass, and eventually blues will get in here. So yeah, so much good stuff going on right now. One of the best times of the year, getting into the summer. So I hope you're out there recreating, having fun, representing our community as best you can, and putting us in the right light and doing everything that is above par, as ethical, and does a good job of showing the better side of our community. All right, as a reminder, every Wednesday we bring you the Sportsman's Voice Roundup. That is our weekly news update, newscast, and we give the rundown of what's gone on in the last week across the nation, bring in a featured guest for a lead story, and then every other week you get this, our featured premiere episode of the TSV podcast. So a lot of stuff upcoming. Sessions are closing, so we'll have more to report as far as wins, misses across the states, and at the federal level. Certainly no shortage of items happening on the Hill. I think that wraps it up. Thanks again, as always, for having us along. Rate, subscribe, follow where available. We so appreciate you guys who are hitting those 5 stars, who are inclined to leave a review. That's awesome. And as always, grab this link, share it in your socials, share it around, especially this episode. I think this is a good one. They're all pretty good, but this one especially, very, very important message here. Share it around. All right, that's it. Back to the turkey woods we go. Until next time, see you later. Thanks for joining us on this edition of the Sportsman's Voice podcast. Ladies and gentlemen, your support is crucial, and you can help us out right now by leaving a review, filling in those 5 stars where available, sharing this episode with friends and family, and engaging with us socially. CSF can be found on Facebook, Instagram, and X, formerly known as Twitter. Together, we can protect the outdoor sports we love and continue to keep you informed wherever you are. That's it for this week. Until next time, we'll see you later.